The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for attending our webinar today. We'll crack on in a minute. Before that, I'll quickly go through the rules of the webinar. So by default, you are all muted on the entry. However, we have the questions and chat options available. So if you could hear me, please text in the chat yes and no. This way we also can check if you have access to the chat option, sorry. Also, if you have any questions, please, during the webinar, please use those as well to send us your questions. We'll try to answer as much as possible during the webinar. If there are any questions that we do not answer, we'll have the option of offloading the script after the webinar, and we'll follow up with all the questions individually, either direct or via your partner managers. And also, the recording will be posted on the Pro Partner, and you will also receive the link to it in an email after the webinar with the follow-up that will include the link as well. So I'm just checking if any one of you have, say, yep, thank you. I can see, guys, that you're dropping the text in the questions. Thank you for that. Cool. In this case, yep, let's start. It's or in UK, it's 10:02. This is, let's say, what my current time is. So let's crack on with the webinar itself. So obviously, the agenda of today's webinar is to go through our new offerings for the AWS and Azure native backups, specifically focusing on cloud and service providers. So we'll go a little bit deeper into what kind of services you can deliver, how you can actually use these products in your SLAs and in the services you deliver to your customers. And we'll go a little bit through the market as well, but the main idea to show the product to inspire the thoughts on how you can actually transfer those into the services you deliver. So today with you is Aryan, our one and only great cloud system engineer. Aryan, can you unmute yourself and say hi?
Yes, thank you, Dennis. So hi to everybody. Thank you for joining our webinar. My name is Aryan Henselmans. I'm cloud system engineer, focusing on the Benelux, so Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg. Together with Dennis today, I'm going to tell you something and show you our great products for AWS and Azure.
So Aryan is literally a star of this webinar. I'm here just to make a smooth introduction, but he will be the guy who will actually show you the products and their functionality. And yep, my name is Dennis. I'm the cloud and hosting manager for UK and I, working with our partners there and helping them actually build the go-to-market strategies and get the most out of Veeam products, and also being the subject matter expert internally in Veeam for the cloud services. So the agenda of the webinar today is we'll quickly go the introduction and go through the market opportunity, and then we'll dive into the two main products that we'll be talking about today, which are the backups for AWS and Azure. We'll show you the main features that were released in the latest edition. We'll explain you the logic and architecture of these products, and we'll also demo both of them to give you actually the feel of the products. But yep, let's start with the market opportunity. Let's quickly dive into why we see those products for public cloud as a key area for portfolio, for the growth of our portfolio, but also for the services delivered by our VCSPs. So if you think about what 2020 was like, obviously it was a tough year for all of us. It was very complicated, and we've also did a report on, let's say, what were the key areas of the year, which you can see on the slides, the outcomes of those. We've also recently actually released the data protection trends report for 2021. It's available on veeam.com, so go and check this one out. It's also really cool, very powerful when you talk about the strategy with your partners or internally. Highly recommended. But if you think about 2020, I'm not gonna say the C word, right? Everybody knows it. It's influenced everybody. But let's think about, let's say, what actually it caused in terms of, let's say, the services being delivered and of the customers' day-to-day lives, right? The famous quote that we all heard, right? Digital transformation plans that were there for, let's say, 5-year period were executed in 5 weeks or something like that, right? And this is true. And what this has actually caused customers is a lot of issues with resource management, right? Because they couldn't probably get the hardware as quick as possible due to certain restrictions. Sometimes they couldn't just go to their data center to do the maintenance. Also, obviously, cyber threats were a big topic. And as we say, right, it's now not a question of if, it's a question of when. So you should be prepared for that. And just recently we heard news about such issues with one of the biggest hyperscalers, right? And then obviously, yep, as I've started with digital transformation, customers were pushed into thinking about this quicker because there was a demand for it. They need to understand how quick they can scale to facilitate the remote working, to facilitate the different demands in the era, let's say, right, of the COVID. And all of that actually translated into the also higher demand for the public cloud, right, and for cloud hosted services. If you see, this is also the outcome of the same report. On we've asked the customers and the organizations globally, like, how do you see your workloads in the next couple of years and compared to today? And as you see, virtualized environments, they expect to keep pretty much the same, but what changes is the balance between physical service and cloud hosted VMs. So it seems like those more legacy physical based workloads are now flowing into the cloud for many reasons, right? Because as we talked, it's easier to, like, from the resource management perspective, people want to outsource it, people want to focus more on their businesses and just get this headache away from them, right? And have a scalable environment on demand. And we definitely see a trend there. So obviously that is no surprise for you. And also, if you think about what's been causing the customers outages, right, in the previous year, and this translates well back into the discussion about the public cloud, right, and resource management. The most pain for them was infrastructure networking outages, application software outages. So it's, again, they experience the troubles of maintaining their backend, and make it and doing it efficiently, and hence again the push to the public cloud, right, where all of this is outsourced. So for that reasons, we see public cloud as one of the main areas of focus for us, for our partners, and for our customers. And if you, as you see here, right, if you try to summarize, okay, these slides before, and then try to understand, okay, what it brings us, like, what is the question? That what is this issue that we are solving, the pain, right, that we're resolving for the customer? Obviously, they need more backup modernization because they want to get free from legacy backup. They want to automate it. They want to reuse the data, right? They're moving from physical to public cloud, right? They want to leverage this, like, and they need an adequate backup solution for that. Hybrid cloud, as we saw, obviously not all the people will migrate direct to the cloud. As we saw, they still keeping that on-prem virtualized environments. So hybrid, so it's not about just migrating them to public cloud, but also facilitating the states in between when they keep something on-prem, something in the cloud, and literally helping them to achieve this journey, like, right, and go through this journey. And obviously the latest one, yep, as we talked about security, right, it's a big issue because, again, it's a question of when, not if. But today we're gonna dive deeply into the public cloud, right? And we already did the webinar couple of weeks ago around data security. So yeah, let's talk about public clouds today. And as we said, it's a big focus for us. And the reason why it's a big focus is because even if you migrate to the public cloud, and obviously there is some, let's say, resiliency in it, though it's important to understand that you still need to back up the public cloud. And the reason for that is the nature of the hyperscalers themselves and the nature of the SLAs they have, right? Here you see the SLA of the AWS. And so on the bottom, you see what they actually responsible for. And in a nutshell, their responsibility is maintaining the service itself and its availability. Though what's in it becomes the responsibility of the customer. Or they should take care of their data, platforms, application, operating systems, right? Because even if you lose the instance in the cloud, okay, it's very easy to bring the, let's say, not the bare metal, but the bare instance back. But what happens to the data that was in there, right? What happens to all the relations, because the application doesn't exist and the instance doesn't exist in the vacuum, right? It's connected to all the others, to the wider infrastructure. Some of that can be on-prem, and when you're restoring, you need to put this instance back into the whole environment, into the context of it, right? And this is, let's say, really not quick, right? And you require it requires the skills and the special software, which is a backup, right? Because this is what backup allows you to do. It allows you not only to bring back the public cloud instance, but also the data inside of it, put it into the perspective of the whole environment. And it's not only the case of the disaster recovery, but think about also the case for migration, right? Because pretty much the same. You can take the VM from on-premise, and Aaron, I think, will show it later to you, right? And restore it back into the public cloud and start backing up. Starting backing up it there. So you kind of protecting yourself on all the stages, right? So, and this is why we see the criticality of backing up the data there. It's not about just the public cloud is popular and people are going there, but also about when you go there, you need to do it mindfully, and you need to understand, let's say, what else you need to actually make the public cloud work for you in an efficient manner, so you can take the most out of it, rather just being there. I think I see it on the market as the biggest trend, right? People try to literally understand public cloud, which is not that easy. And the part of it is understanding that you actually need a backup tool. So if we talk about the Microsoft, it's pretty much the same. I'm not going to stay on this slide for long, but yeah, again, if we talk about the data, about devices, accounts, and security of it, right? What happens if someone takes the control over your root domain, right? Or I don't know, there's some other issues. So it's, again, right, you should take care of it, right? Or the customer should take care of it. And it's not really the responsibility of the hyperscaler. So pretty much the same as it was in AWS. So for that very reasons, right, we have actually developed 3 products that are native to the hyperscalers. So the first one we've released, which is now version 3, is the backup and availability for AWS. We also have recently released the second version of the backup for Microsoft Azure or Azure, depending on where you're from, right? Which is now integrated into VBR, so you can transact it via your rental agreement as well. And also just recently, we've released the first version of GCP. It's already available via the marketplace, though it's not directly available via your volume rental agreement. So on this presentation, we'll focus mostly on AWS and Azure, though please reach out to your partner managers regarding the GCP product as well, because we have it there. It's really cool, very powerful. And if you have an opportunity for GCP, please reach out to your Veeam reps, and we'll be happy to help. Before I pass to Iran, I just want to quickly also go through licensing to get this nailed and forget about it once and for all, so we can focus on the product. So as I've said, all of these products will be available either via the marketplace directly, so you can get all these products direct from AWS, Microsoft Marketplace, or GCP, and they will work just as they should. So if this model works better for you, please use it. Also, if you, let's say, want to leverage your volume rental agreement and add consumption to it to kind of increase your tier and get the better buy price and discount all the other services, you can also do it. It's available. You can just report it as you report all the other products in the Pulse portal. So in the VBR licenses, whatever the edition you have, right, alongside with the normal counters that we all use, which are VM service, you now will see the Cloud VM counter. And this Cloud VM counter is actually the license, the counter for the license for any public cloud product, whether it's AWS, Azure, or GCP when it gets integrated with the VBR, it will be the Cloud VM. So again, if you have the VBR license already, go to Pulse, see this counter, play with it, and if you, let's say, you want to launch any of the services in the public cloud, just use this license, push it there, and it will successfully, let's say, do the backups and help you run the product. So to be honest, this is where I'd like to stop my part of the presentation. Hopefully I managed to paint you the picture, right, of why public cloud is important and why backing it up is important. And now, Ariane, I'll pass it to you to actually show the guys how we do it in Veeam style, right? And how you achieve the Veeam quality of the services.
Thanks, Dennis. Great. So before I'm going into the demo, I'm first going to tell you I have some slides about the AWS backup, and later on about Azure, and then we dive into the demo. So looking at Veeam Backup for AWS, it's integrated with Backup and Replication from version 2, but in basic, it's AWS native backup and recovery. So we leverage the native tools, the native APIs of AWS, and we have built a point product for that, which can be integrated, and I'm going to show you that in the demo. So looking at the main features, it's AWS native, like I was saying, and of course we built a secure architecture. So we store the backups encrypted. The appliance we are using is secure, built from secure perspective. We integrated that with a unified management, the common control plane. So I'm going to show you that, and you probably are going to see that the product looks very much the same as Veeam Backup for Azure does, as well as Google Cloud does. And later on, we can integrate it with VBR, which is the common control plane. One large thing in public cloud is how much the backups are costing. So what does a snapshot cost? What does a backup to an S3 bucket cost? So what we have built into the product is a cost estimation tool. And with that tool, you can immediately see what the backup of those VMs or those applications will cost you at the end of the month. It's really useful to get an idea for your customers what the cost will be. So looking at all the features, like I was saying, cloud native. So we're talking all the APIs that AWS has built us, so that you can make backups and do disaster recoveries of the EC2 VMs and the RDS databases that are being provided at Amazon, and also the VPC settings that are into your subscriptions. Of course, we leverage the APIs, we make snapshots, and we can tier those snapshots in a Veeam ready format, in a Veeam backup format to an Amazon S3 bucket. Depending on your needs to store that for long term. We build policies, backup policies, and we can do that fully automated. I'm going to show you that we can leverage the usage of tags, for example, and you can even make use of a RESTful API, which the product has a native capability of. Of course, depending on your needs and depending on your customer needs, we can do a cross-account and region backup. All depends on how you want to deploy this, and we track the cost of, for example, egress traffic to a different region within our cost estimation tool. I'm going to show you that in a couple of minutes. Dennis, please leave the mouse alone. So we can do the lightning fast recovery. So it's possible to do the recovery from our product. We can do the entire VM, of course. We can do that to a different VM. We can do that to a different disk. And of course, we can restore individual files. For databases, we can restore the database or the instances. And I'm going to show you in a couple of minutes the VPC part, which is pretty awesome, to be honest, because we can really restore individual items from the VPC backup. So if somebody has created an internet gateway or some security policies, we can see what's being created, and we can, of course, restore that. From consistency point of view, we have integrated this with the VSS options, which is being addressed from within the SSM policies, the SSM IAM policies that are available in AWS, and we can even do pre and post scripts that are being triggered from that same SSM policy. Of course, the backup cost calculation, what I was already explaining, the RESTful API, and when we integrate it with VBR, we can do application and data portability. I think we are already telling everybody a couple of years the cloud mobility story, where you can make backups on one platform, restore to a different platform. This way, with the integration within VBR, it's really possible to, for example, restore your AWS EC2 VM back to VMware on-premise or to Hyper-V on-premise, or the other way around. Move your, we could already do that from VBR to move your on-premise backups to AWS or to Azure. And when doing that, we are going to see all the backup jobs in a common control plane. So we get an overview of how all backup jobs are running. So in version 3 of AWS, Veeam Backup for AWS, we have added a couple of extra options. One of them is the ability to backup RDS databases. And the option to backup VPC settings. We had some requests from customers that they were finding it out that we made backups of the EC2 VMs. That's great, but all the VPC settings that were associated with those VMs were gone or weren't clear. So this way we can restore them or compare them and look what has changed. What we also integrated in version 3 is a role-based access control. So we are able to use 3 types of roles, the administrator role, the porter role, and the restore only role. And this way you can really separate your users or your customers at the correct access level. and we can integrate that with SAML to facilitate a single sign-on solution. So already explained the application consistency. We could already do that for VSS, but now we can do that with pre and post scripts that are available in the guest to provide even greater application consistency. For the ones who want to use this through Amazon Kinesis, we will be able to restore files directly back into the original VM. So if you have designed that, we are able to use that to leverage that with the correct IAM policies, of course. Customers who have an outpost, so an on-premise AWS setup, we have support for that within version 3. A highly requested feature is to exclude certain EBS volumes of EC2 VMs. That's one of the features that has been added, and we will be able to add custom worker tags to the Worker Vms. So how does that architecture look like then? We basically are making backups of EC2. An EC2 VM has a block device connected to the VM, and so enhanced block storage, and we make a snapshot of that. For RDS, we do the same. We connect to the RDS services with the APIs that are available, and we make an RDS snapshot of those instances, those databases. If you then look at the EC2 VM, those snapshots, you can just leverage the snapshots if that's fine. All good, but perhaps you want to transfer the snapshots to an S3 bucket. And then we'll be starting up a worker, and the worker is a VM which is able to read the EBS snapshot and convert that to a Veeam format that is being stored in the S3 bucket. Once we're done with that, we just destroy the worker and it gets removed from the system. This is all being controlled from the Veeam Backup for AWS appliance. In this case, the backup appliance has been located in the backup account, and it's talking to the production account with the correct IAM policies. For VPC backups, the VPC backups at first get stored into the Veeam Backup for AWS appliance in the database that's located on that system, and we can make a copy to S3. That's why the 3 and the 4 are in the picture here. One of the other things that we can use is snapshot replication. So in this case, we just left the S3 copy out of the picture just to make it a little bit more clearer. We can replicate those snapshots to a different region. So I'm going to show you that in a couple of minutes. My EBS snapshots get replicated from Paris to Stockholm in my case. The same goes for the RDS snapshots. We can replicate those to a different region just for redundancy, and we can replicate that with different encryption policies as well, so and with different IAM policies. So from a security perspective, that's also a good idea to do. Looking at recoverability, in basic, we can recover from the snapshot. That's probably the most quick to do. What we do then is we recover the entire VM, we overwrite that, or we recover that to a different VM, or we recover just a single disk, depending on what's the emergency and what do you need to restore. Of course, we can do the same coming from the S3 bucket, depending on, for example, if the snapshot is no longer available and you only have the backup in the S3 bucket. When we look at file recovery, we of course can do the file level recovery coming from both options, so from the snapshot and from the S3 bucket. Looking at RDS, we'll just recover the RDS database from the snapshot, and we can overwrite the database. We can put it into a new instance, into a different database. It depends on your needs. For VPC, it's quite simple. We fetch it either from S3 bucket or we fetch it from the server and we just override it or we just compare it. That's also very nice to see to do. So it gets interesting when you add the Veeam Backup for AWS appliance to your VBR server. This way you can do the restores back to on-premise, or you orchestrate the restores from within your Veeam Backup and Replication server. In this case, for example, it's even possible to do a restore of data coming off AWS, for example, to Azure in this example. So it gives you much more flexibility when you are connecting this to a Veeam Backup and Replication server. So before diving into the demo, I think you kind of get the picture regarding Veeam Backup for Azure. It's almost the same with the same options, although it's version 2 and the AWS is at version 3, but we leverage the Azure native capability. So all APIs that Microsoft has given us to talk to, we build it secure from the basis. We added a cloud estimation tool in it, and we leverage the same common control plane, and we can add it to VBR. So you get to see all the jobs and all, you get an overview of all what's happening within your AWS appliances and Azure appliances. So the features are pretty much the same. It works different. We're talking with different APIs, but in basic it's the same. We don't require an agent, it's cloud native. Yes. We can do the recovery the same way as I was explaining for AWS. We can restore the entire VM, we can restore the disks or individual files depending on your needs. We have automated this so we can use tags to add VMs. It's fully RESTful API as well. We added that backup cost calculation to see what the costs will be for next month or coming month. We can do things across subscription and region depending on your needs, on your customers' needs. Like I was saying, it's RESTful API integrated, and we can add multiple subscription support, for example, by using Azure Lighthouse. So in version 2, we've added 3 major things. So we integrated it with backup and replication, and one important thing, we have added the option to use tiered GFS. So that means storing your backups depending on your lifetime of the data on the correct tier of Azure Blob. So data that will be destroyed within 30 days will probably cost more on a cool tier than on a hot tier. So store those on the hot tier. GFS, so the weeklies, the monthly backups, that's quite interesting to store that on the cool Azure Blob tier. And so I'm going to show you that in the demo. What we also did is we integrated the application consistency, so we will kick off the Windows VSS or use pre and post scripts like you saw in Veeam Backup for AWS. So looking from architecture perspective, it's pretty much the same picture as with AWS. Different terminology, different names, but we make backups of Azure VMs. Those Azure VMs, they have attached managed disks. Those managed disks, we take snapshots of those. If that's fine, just leave it there. We can convert those snapshots to Azure Blob, and we do that by starting up a worker. It's a small VM. It converts. It connects the snapshot. It converts it to a Veeam format that is sitting in the Azure Blob storage. And after that, we terminate those workers. We deploy the Veeam Backup for Azure appliance into Microsoft Azure, perhaps in a backup subscription or in a backup account, and we connect with the production part. Looking at the restores, it goes pretty much the same. Restores from snapshots, restores from blob storage, depending on which version you need, how fast does it need to go, and we can do that to the same VM, destroying it and starting it up with the backup, or we can do that to a different VM, and we can even do that for individual disks. Looking at the file level recovery, it's the same depending on the need. Open the Azure snapshot of that specific VM, browsing through it, requesting the files you need, or doing it directly from Azure Blob. Here is it interesting. When we do a connectivity to Veeam Backup Replication, we get the option to recover back to on-premise, so we can do the same as I was explaining with AWS. Those Azure VMs can be restored back to on-premise. We can even store a copy in the repository that's on-premise if that's needed. So you probably are thinking, why should I want to do that? But there are some cases that specific VMs, for example, that are highly critical for the existence of the company, that you want to store a copy in your own repository that resides in your own data center, for example. And of course, we can do an Azure backup and restore that to Amazon. So this way we have really that cloud mobility picture that we were telling you about. And then, as you can see, the AWS picture again, it's pretty much the same. So let's go to my screen and let me show you some interesting things. So I'm going to share my screen. And I need to do the correct screen, I think. This screen. So where do you get this VM? You can get it right from the marketplace. So if you search for Veeam Backup for AWS in the AWS marketplace, you see it here. You can subscribe to that. It's basically an AMI image, which will ask you where to put it, which VPCs, which security groups, which IAM policies, stuff like that. The same goes for the Azure marketplace. So you can search for Veeam. You will see the Veeam Backup for Microsoft Azure Bring Your Own License edition or the free edition. It doesn't really matter which one you use, depending on what you're going to do with it. If you connect it to VBR, please use the Bring Your Own License edition. So I'm going to focus a little bit on AWS because it's the most feature rich. So what happens when you have set it up, that VM, you will get an appliance, an Ubuntu Linux appliance that is being started up in your subscription, and you can sign in with the username and password you just created during the creation of those VMs. So in my case, it's AWS user. Some passwords for that. So when we sign in, we of course have to do some basic configuration, and the first thing to do is to add an AWS IAM role. With those IAM roles, you will be able to connect to all your resources that are available. So in my case, I only have one, but if you do this in large, we really recommend to leverage 3 types of roles. So a service role for the workers, a policy role to perform the backup and restore, and a repository role plainly to write data to the repository. We have some options here to check your AWS permissions. So if all your EIM policies are good and set up correctly, and you can add more here. So next thing is connect an S3 bucket. So in this case, we just go to the wizard, we give it a name, we define that AIM role. So that's why if you do this at large, please make multiple IAM roles at the account level. We have a nice knowledge base article on which we are explaining which IAM roles are needed and stuff like that. So please take a look at that. And then we can specify a bucket depending on your locations. So we are in our Veeam playground, so we have a lot of buckets here on different locations, and depending on your need, you just choose one. So in the end, it's probably a good idea to use the buckets on the location where your EC2 VMs and your RDS databases and your VPCs are running. So creating multiple buckets, that's no issue. So I'm not going to going through the wizard at total, but I'm going to show you what we do. And so I added an account here and a repository. This is my bucket. I use a folder there. I have added encryption. You don't see the passwords here, but believe me, it's encrypted. And that's the way we add repositories. Then there's one more thing we need to do, and that is to define the worker VMs. So that VM that was sitting in the middle when we are using file level recovery, the VM that is mounting the snapshot, the VM that is presenting you the backup from S3. It's also the VM that uses the snapshot and convert that into the S3 bucket. So what we're basically doing is for each region, we need a worker. So specify a region. In my case, I use the Paris region. For example, I have some workloads running in London as well. I can choose London, choose your availability zone, depending on where your resources are located. I don't know if here is something located. Choose your VPC that you are using there. So you need to make sure that you have set up some VPCs with the correct endpoint connections, that you will be able to talk to the S3 bucket that you are going to use for the London VMs in this case, and the subnet that's correct, and the security group that comes with it. I'm not going to save it, so I'm not going to press next. This way you can add workers for each location and the network settings that are being used. What we are doing is, depending on the snapshot, the size of the original EC2 VM, we are spinning up a worker that is able to get the disk, because there are some limitations on specific type of VMs and the size of the disk that is associated with those VMs. So we take care of that. We just have to set up the availability zone, the VPC, the subnet, and the security group. After we have done this, we're ready to make a backup policy. We make backup policies for either EC2, RDS, and VPC. I will come to those later. And just press the add button. Give those policies a name. Select the IAM role, select your region. So in this case, in my case, it's Paris. Apply, and then you select the resources to protect. So pretty straightforward, what you're used to with Veeam. We can browse an instance in the Paris region. We can do that based on tags, and that's more interesting. So I made a tag, backup IAM, value is true, and I can protect those VMs that have those tags. So it's able to, you will be able to add a tag, probably from automation tools, and we are automatically protecting those VMs that get the correct tag. So this way, we can add some VMs. Let me do an instance for now. I'm not going to save. Sorry, I need to remove this one and do it the correct way. Protect, apply, next. You can see we can do the exclusions. This VM doesn't have multiple volumes, so I can't exclude anything, but you get the ID. Then we can do the application aware snapshots on Windows-based AWS VMs, and we are leveraging that through the SSM agent. So make sure your IAM policies are correct, that you are able to use SSM to trigger the VSS. That's the thing what it's doing. The same goes for the scripts, and it's the same for the Windows instances, so I'm not going to show you that. You need to make sure that the script is already located into the VM. So you specify the path there, you specify the arguments, and even some parameters we can assign there. It goes the same for the post snapshot script, and we have some additional options depending on your needs. If you only want to do that for snapshots, that will be copied to a repository, stuff like that. I'm going to do that. Press next. Then we have the option to replicate snapshots. That was what I was showing in the architecture picture. So here you define what your target region is where you want to replicate snapshots. So my source is in Paris, but I can say, okay, I'm using this account that has access rights in, and that's IAM policy that has access rights in, for example, where is it? Stockholm, and I can use a different encryption key here. So this is a KMS key, so you need to pre-create that into the AWS part. And we can use that for all volumes or all volumes that are encrypted. So pressing cancel here. Not going to do that. And here we make the selection that we want to make a backup. So we always leverage a snapshot, period. Because the snapshot is the way how we are able to use CPT. And when we have a snapshot, we can enable a backup. We can't do backup without a snapshot. So that's the thing here. So in this case, I only have one repository. You already saw that. I select that. And here you can also make sure you can transfer this data then to an S3 bucket, for example, located in Stockholm, but then you pay egress cost. So if you press next, then we define the retention. It's pretty straightforward. The daily, so how many, at what time do we make snapshots? How many do we take? So we can make for an hour, for example. And when do we do backup? So at 10 p.m. and I want to do it at 10 a.m. as well. Those backups get stored in S3. Yeah. How long do I want to keep that? So if I probably do 69 here, I would probably want to store a little bit more here. And what you can see is that the cost estimation, as you can see on top, will increase. So if I get back to 14, it should decrease a little bit. Not yet. What we're going to see, $4. And when we do weekly, and we edit those settings, and we make a backup weekly, and we store that for 1 month, for example, we see that the backups get being attracted into the cost calculation. When I add monthly and yearly, we add the monthlies. So I want to do this all year long, for example, and we can do like this, possible. Now we store 12 months. You see the cost will be increasing. Of course, my VM isn't a real, it's just a dummy VM. It has a little bit of data, so it's not really representative, but you get the ID, and we want to store it for 5 years, for example. When I press next, you get an overview of those costs. My instance doesn't have a name, otherwise the name would pop up here, and you can see the snapshots cost $1.13 a month. The replicas, we don't do that. The backup, we have some traffic costs, and we have some transactions, totaling about $4 a month. So how do we come to that? We use some assumptions here. So basically, it's a cost estimation. We think that you have a change rate about 3%. We do a compression ratio of 2:1, and we think that all disks will be occupied for 70% of data. So if you have a VM with 10 disks, and those 10 disks are all 2 terabytes big each, we assume you have all those 10 disks at 70% occupied size. So in reality, it could be a little bit less, but we have to make some assumptions and use some values to calculate this on. So discarding this, so looking at, I have 2 jobs here. I have a Linux VMs which are doing snapshots, backups, and replication. So looking at these jobs, so you see we have I have a region in Stockholm. I do backups. This is my schedule. I just do daily and weekly, and you see the cost estimation here for snapshots, backup, and traffic. When we do RDS, show you that, and we create a job. I'm not going to add a job. I'm going to edit this in this case. So I made a Postgres RDS database. I've replicate those, replicate that database, and we can even copy the text. So the source, I've added it here. So sorry, I was looking for this. So you can really base a database on its source. So I have a Postgres database. And if you have multiple in RDS, you can really select that here and protect that. The rest of the wizard is pretty much the same. The cost estimation will show you what's the snapshots and the replicas. And we have some settings here. And of course, a summary. So for VPC, the same goes. Takes always a little time to do. Yes, here's the VPC configuration. We just create that and we store that. Automatically connect the VPC in a specific region. We can add multiple regions with the correct IAM role, and we store that additionally on the S3 bucket as well. And here we specify the retention. So looking at those data, I need to hurry up a little bit. Watching the time. So when we do a restore, we can pretty much go to the protected data, pick a restore point. For example, this is a backup, and we can do the instance restore or a volume restore. We can also do a volume level restore, and it really doesn't matter which selection we do. So if I do this, a volume restore, for example, we can select the correct restore point. I didn't select the correct one, just use this one. Yes, of this morning. If there are some exclusions, if you have multiple disks, you can do that. In this case, it's only one disk connected. Which IAM role or a temporary access key, that's also useful, quite useful to do a restore to a different account or something like that. Original, different settings. I think you get the ID. What are the capabilities here? The same goes for RDS. So I can pick a specific snapshot. You see the Northwind databases here, the default one. You can restore that. Select a restore point. So which restore point do you want? A snapshot, an AWS snapshot. Select, because the AWS snapshots are still running on the Postgres. The same goes where to original, different geo region, and with all the settings, the encryption, network settings, and stuff like that. What I find very interesting, I'm sorry for that, is the VPC option here, because I already needed, had a need for that. As you can see, we see what the changes are. So we have the latest changes were the addition of one route table and one security group. So we can really do a restore of a specific, and of course the entire VPC, but we can do specific items. So you can, for example, say, I have an internet gateway and all the settings are gone. I don't know which one. This is mine, for example, and I can restore that. I'm not going to do that because I'm probably going to lose connection. This way you can really restore your settings, your specific options here. Very interesting to see. And we have a compare option here. So let's do this one, for example. So here there are things changed, and you see which was changed for which route tables, which gateways, stuff like that. So now the interesting part. What happens when you connect this VM to VBR? So I have a VBR server here. When you go to backup infrastructure in Veeam version 11, you can press the add server button here, and you just can add a Veeam Backup for AWS or Azure appliance. We can even deploy a new appliance from within here, but if you have already deployed an appliance, just connect it here. Connect with your correct AWS account within your region, within your data center. Just go to the wizard and we'll fetch that AWS appliance. You can add multiple appliances in VBR. This way you can add multiple appliances for multiple customers, for example. The same goes for the Azure VM. And when you have done that, you will see that in the backup jobs, you will see the backup jobs that are available. So that those Linux VMs job, it was last run 65 minutes ago. It was a success. You see it here. You can start and stop it here. You can see the statistics, and the same goes for the RDS and the VPC. When we have connected those appliances, you will see the external repository. And the external repository is that S3 bucket, that Azure Blob storage account. And you can do restores from that. So the Windows VM that I have in Paris in AWS, we can do an instant recovery or Hyper-V. But we can also do an restore really open directly from the Windows files. Do that in the web browser as well. It really depends on your needs and what you want to restore. It takes a couple of seconds, not that much. It's a bit slower than with the normal repository, which is probably located on your own data center, but as you can see, it's pretty fast. And you can do your restores like you're used to. I can do. Same goes what I was already saying. We can make a backup copy job. So I have two backup copy jobs of Azure, Aws. And so this VM is very important for me as a company. This is the most critical VM I have. So I decided to make a backup copy back to my on-premise scale-out backup repository. So this way we have total integration. Quickly going to the Veeam Backup for Azure VM. As you can see, the overview of that VM is pretty much the same. So that's what we mean with the common control plane. Look and feel totally the same. Of course, different terminology. So going to the configuration, we have some different things to do. We add an Azure account based on the Azure Active Directory. We have to create the workers. The workers are also located within a specific region. And we connect a repository. And here you can see I have two repositories, a cool and a hot one. And when I make a policy, and that's what I'm really wanting to show you with the Azure part, is this case my backups have a warning. And why do they have a warning? They have a warning because it's telling me I have selected the cool repository for this policy, and that might be high in cost potential. So if I edit those jobs, it's the same as you can see. Select your region, select your subscription, do the guest processing part, select what you want to back up, and then here in the schedule, I've selected on purposely the cool repository with the daily retention. I only keep it for 14 days. When I select cool, I need to store it for at least 30 days. Otherwise, I get a penalty for my early deletion. So for example, I could do this, and then you see the warning gets away. This way you can really keep track of costs. The rest of the wizard, totally the same as with AWS. The cost estimation, the same part, and you can see snapshots are more expensive than backup. Some transaction costs, the same assumptions here. So let's finish this job. And the same goes for the integration part. We added here in the backup infrastructure. So I see we're past due to our time today. One more slide to show you. So bear with me, and then I'm going to pass it back to Dennis. So when you have connected your VBR server or VBR servers to the service provider console, you are going to see those Cloud VM jobs. The license is being managed by the VBR server, and you can see the licenses here as well. So you can really bill your customers depending on what they have purchased, what from rental agreement, the Cloud VMs, what Dennis was telling us. I didn't show you the RESTful API, but it's there and you can really use that. So passing it back to you, Dennis.
Thank you, Arjan. Thank you for presenting these products. Really loved it, really loved the integration and all the possibilities that are opening. I think, yeah, just to round up, I want to thank all of you for attending, those of you who was live with us, for those of you who have watched it in recording, thank you for finding time as well. I think what I want to wrap up at is, I always say to my partners, we give you the product, but you deliver the service. So try to, when you will be demoing this product, when you'll be testing them, try to think like out of the box. Try to think what services you can deliver out of one product. Don't just go, okay, one product is one service. It's not really like that, right? The products we showed today, they give you a lot of flexibility around being able to leverage multiple clouds, right? I saw cases people, backing up Azure and sending those backups to AWS for higher resiliency and things like that. So try to be creative and see really what fits to your customers, what value you can create to them, right? Because all the services in the end of the day are around value we deliver them, right? And this is what actually retains the customer with us, right? And guarantees that, let's say, they're happy and enjoying what you do. So on this thing, I will wrap up. Don't forget that we also have GCP version 1. I think you've seen, right, the progress and the idea behind the release schedule. Version 1, we released the product, we put on the market. Version 2, we integrated with the VBR. Version 3, we then extend the functionality within the hyperscaler. So look for version 2 of GCP when it hopefully gets integrated with the VBR. And I also want to let you know that obviously this is not a standalone webinar. This is the part of the technical sessions that we are running for our EMEA partners. So the next one will take place on the 13th of April. And there we'll cover the new version of Veeam Service Provider Console, version 5. Aaron has showed you some functionality of it already, and on that session, we'll dive into more details. Thank you very much again, and yep, enjoy the rest of your week, enjoy the rest of the day, and for those of you who celebrate Easter in a couple of weeks, happy Easter, everybody. Thank you very much. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Dennis. Bye-bye. Thank you all for listening.
Yep, and thank you, Arjan, actually, for supporting me, and thank you, Kirill, for being there and supporting us as well. Cheers all.
Yes.